Project podcast. So today I want to share with you a few updates of things that we have going on and how you can be a part of helping us going forward. So as many of you know, my father, Dale Richardson, is a mechanical engineering technologist with a bachelor degree in technology, and I worked for the provincial government back home in Saskatchewan, Canada, at a maximum security prison and hospital for the criminally and mentally insane. Now, as many of you know, we were exposing the improper contagion mitigation procedures for the COVID pandemic in early 2020, and likewise, how that relates to human trafficking, treason, and election interference in Canada and the United States. And this is precisely why the CARES Project has filed petitions for redress of grievance in the states of Texas, Colorado, and Michigan, as well as the province of Alberta in Canada. Now, it has recently come to the attention of the CARES Project that there was a mother in Colorado who was punished by the courts for trying to protect her children against a predator for being sexually abused and brutally attacked by the father. She's now going to jail and serving time for trying to protect her children against the evils and the corruption that we have all seen the last few years. Now, this is the same thing that we are seeing with Alberta's Minister of Health, Ariana Lagrange, who would not take the necessary actions to protect children from being sexually abused by convicted pedophiles and continuing to allow them to practice in the province of Alberta. And their licenses are currently being protected by the Alberta College of Physicians and Surgeons. Absolutely horrendous, if you ask me. The failure of our governments to bring these petitions to the floor have directly affected patriots like Tina Peters in Colorado, who are being politically persecuted with complete impunity, by the way, while convicted pedophiles are being protected. Here at the CARES Project, it is important to us that we the people are able to take our rights back and use our God-given constitutional rights to be able to expose the evil going on in this country and hold politicians accountable. We need especially the strong men to take charge in supporting the CARES Project's action plan financially in doing the work of holding the government accountable to protect our rights. And if you guys know me, you know already that this is my favorite quote, and so I'm going to leave it with you here today, because the most important thing that we need in this country right now is strong men. And I, as a woman, know just as much as anyone else just how valuable and important it is for us to have strong men leading our country to success. And so I'll leave you with this. The greatest want of the world is the want of men. Men who will not be bought or sold. Men who in their innermost souls are true and honest. Men who do not fear to call sin by its right name. Men whose conscience is as true to duty as the needle is to the pole. And men who will stand for the right, though the heavens may fall. So, my friends, you've heard all that I've had to say today, and the importance of the same. As you can see, we have people, strong patriots and women, standing up for what's right and being completely destroyed. Politically, financially, we have good women in this country, good mothers whose children are being completely abused and taken advantage of within the system and even within their homes. And nothing is being done about it. Now is the time to take a stand. The CARES Project has an action plan, and based on all the experience that we've had throughout the years, we have the ability to teach people how to get this done. We need to work together in a time such as this, because our time is limited. Elections are coming up, and something needs to change. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. Now's the time to take a stand, and that is precisely why I encourage you to stand with the CARES Project for we the people. Thank you.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the CARES Project podcast. Today we have with us Theodora Antar. She's a law student that is going through a lot of issues. Reported the abuse of her children, and when that happened, her children were taken. She's been advocating for the justice for her family and others like herself. and she's owned some businesses and so forth, and is now currently dealing with the corruption in the courts. So if you want to just kind of give us a little bit more about yourself, what you're doing, where you're at right now.
I'm not sure what happened, but it is glitching and you're completely frozen and so am I. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you fine and see you fine.
Okay. I'm gonna try to log off and log back on. I'm sorry, it's completely glitched out. Just 1 second.
Okay, it looks like there's some technical difficulties, so we will see what's going on here.
Yes. My name's Theodora. I have two daughters. Angelina is 5 and Juliana is 10. And in between October of 2022 and May of 2023, there were 4 different investigations conducted by the New Britain, Connecticut Police Department regarding sexual assault that my then 3-year-old disclosed to me that was happening at her father's house that she alleged was done to her by her half brother, who is 13 years older. And so there was a lot of negligence. There was a lot of missteps that took place during those police investigations. And ultimately, on May 25th, 2023, a family court judge in the New Haven Superior Court named Jane Cupson Grossman ordered an immediate, sudden, without warning custody transfer and forcibly removed my 4-year-old daughter, Angelina, from me. And she was forced to then go live with her father, where she was alleging she was being sexually abused. I was accused of lying about the sexual abuse allegations. And in the middle of a 2-hour court hearing, she was removed from me under what was purported to be a temporary order. But then less than a week later, the judge went in and converted that temporary order into a final order. And the final order has been in place now for more than 18 months. And in the last year and a half, I've seen my daughter Angelina less than 3 total days. Her father has pretty much full control over if, when, or under what terms I see her or talk to her. And he has since stated that he's not going to let me talk to her or see her at all, and doing everything he can to isolate her from me. And I had sole custody of Juliana, my 10-year-old, for almost a decade. And then on March 9th of 2024, I was illegally detained by the Port Authority police at John F. Kennedy Airport in New York when we were about to board a plane to take a 8-day international vacation. And at that point, the police removed Juliana without DCF or a parent present, after trying to enforce an order on me that was issued by the same judge who took Angelina, but was never served, and I had no knowledge of it. And so my rights and my daughter's rights were violated over and over. And we have gone through so much trauma, and we have been through so much through the system where instead of protecting us, the system has actually tried to demonize us. And we have now been put in a hole pretty much where it's difficult, if not impossible, to get out. And so, as a 2L law student who has also been studying, the criminal justice system and so on and so forth, I think that I have been exposed to so many different aspects of the judicial system as a whole. And now I've also made it a mission to try to help other people, especially people who are incarcerated right now. And we have some other moms that are from my state that are also dealing with the exact same judge, the exact same police department, the exact same entities. And it seems to be a systematic pattern going on in Connecticut where whenever moms report sexual abuse, the judges accuse them of lying and order them to go live with the fathers, and they'll either give the mom a no contact order or they'll put them on supervised visits with extreme barriers to make it almost impossible to see your child. And I have, along with several other parents from my state and others, we have exposed and have strong evidence that they're running a basically intricate sex child trafficking ring, and other states are involved as well. But I have a lot of inside knowledge about what's happened in Connecticut because it's affected me personally.
All right, so let's get back here. It's saying that you're having issue that you have found a child sex trafficking. So what is leading you to believe that that's happening? What was the first inkling that this type of thing was going on?
Definitely the first thing that was alarming to me was when I began doing research on the judge in my case. I felt early on that every time we would go to court, she seemed biased. She seemed like her decisions were not in line with the laws and the statutes and things like that. And I started going down the rabbit hole on Google, searching everything and anything. Did I lose you? Sorry.
No, I'm here.
Okay. So upon further research, I realized that there were multiple articles, there were multiple existing lawsuits against this judge, and there were multiple people who stated that she had a long history of removing children from their mothers unjustly and making unjust, unconstitutional decisions and putting children in danger. And so when I saw that, I started to think, okay, something's up. And I had no issues dealing in family court prior to that. Like I said, I had sole legal and sole physical custody of Juliana. And when I first dealt with court, it was in 2015. I do believe that once COVID happened and the courts in our state, Connecticut, closed for maybe 9 months, 10 months, close to a year, the courts were completely closed. And after they finally opened, they were only doing Zoom hearings, and then they slowly started to phase back into being in person. I think that COVID was like a pivotal shift where they basically, I like to say, installed some corrupt players into the system. And it was kind of like quietly done. Where now in every single county, it doesn't matter where you go, there's at least one judge who is part of this ring. And when it happened to me, it kind of was just a huge shock because I thought like, okay, I have my own house. I have my own businesses. I have a clean record. I have sole custody of my other child. I'm a law student. I'm a notary. You know what I mean? Like never had any convictions, never had any substantiations of abuse or neglect ever. Nothing to think that losing custody would even be a possibility. And so when I went in a courtroom and simply brought up the fact that my daughter had been evaluated for sexual assault and that she was stating that she was being sexually assaulted by her half brother during her father's parenting time, the fact that me bringing that up was then used as an immediate grounds to remove my little girl from me when she had just turned 4. She was removed from me 4 days after her 4th birthday.
Okay.
And so I think that was what opened the door for me.
Okay, let's back up because our viewers are not quite as familiar with your situation. So when you began to bring up the sexual assault of your children, what was going on? When did this happen? Like how long ago did this happen for one, and when and who was the person?
So I want to say maybe the summer of 2022, my daughter was then 3 years old, and I noticed that she was doing what appeared to be sexual behaviors on her stuffed animals. And I would notice that she was looking like she was humping her stuffed animals. And I thought it was strange, but I thought, okay, maybe she's playing. And I kind of just tried to just ignore it, thinking it's no big deal. By October of 2022, she was doing it again, and it seemed like it was more frequent, and I kept noticing it, and it made me feel like something wrong. Like I had the feeling in my stomach, like, okay, this is wrong. And I said to her, like, what are you doing? And she says, oh, she was doing this act on her stuffed animal that's named Mousy. And I'm like, what are you doing? And she's like, oh, well, Mousy's tickling me, as she's literally humping Mousy. And I'm like, oh, has anyone else ever tickled you there like that? And that's when she said, yes. And I said, okay, who tickled you like that there? And she said, Sal and Dom, which are her two older half brothers that are from her father, that are with his ex-wife, Monica Perez. And the Sal is like 12 or 13, and Dominic is 18, and Angelina is 5. So they're like 8 to 13 years older than her. And usually she would only see them during her father's parenting time. So when she named them and she was doing that, I was like, okay. I then, after speaking about it with my lawyer, after speaking about it with a therapist, I was told by the therapist that you need to report this to DCF. And she said, if you don't make a report to DCF, I will do it myself because I'm a mandated reporter. But she pressured me to do it myself and said, look, it will be easier if you just do it yourself, because then you know all the details, you know the story better. But if you don't want to do it, I will do it because I'm mandated by law. So I was like, okay, well,
Sorry,
I'll just do it.
who was the person that said that you had to report it to DCS?
This was my therapist that I was seeing at the time. So I was discussing about it in the session, and she said, okay, well, since you're saying about possible child abuse, either you have to report it when we finish our session, or I'm going to, as a mandated reporter. And since she basically kind of said it would be better if I did it, I said, okay, no problem. As soon as we end our call, I'm going to call DCF. And she's like, please let me know once you did, because if you don't do it, I will have to do it. So once I was done making the report, I notified her that I had, and DCF contacted me back within 48 hours. They wanted to immediately come and have a home visit and see Angelina. And my lawyer at the time, Don Cretella, who's the partner at Zingaro and Cretella and Raziel, which is out of like Fairfield and New Haven counties, he said to me that it was not necessary for us to file for an emergency ex parte to stop the visits. He said that I could simply withhold my daughter and not send her for the visits.
Well, so why was not the counselor that you spoke to? Why did she mention going to the police?
She told me that as a mandated reporter, she was required to report it to DCF, and that if I didn't do it myself, that she would do it. And that was it. And so I said, okay, I will report it to DCF. But what they do is when DCF gets a report like that, they then automatically give it to the police of whatever town they're saying it happened in. So when I made the DCF call, they forwarded it also to the New Britain Police Department and assigned it to their detective for the Child Bureau, for the Youth Bureau. So at that point, DCF and New Britain Police were both basically dispatched simultaneously. And I was told that if you call the police, they call DCF as well. If you call DCF, they call the police. They contact each other.
Well, it doesn't. First contact should be police. When a crime occurs. What is this? What is the social worker gonna do? Like honestly, like
well, it's like who's going to say, okay, this was 100% a crime? Number one, you don't get taken seriously. Number two, you don't get believed. Number three, they say, oh, she's 3 years old.
No, it doesn't matter. Like somebody pick up the phone, and they sit down and say, well, they're with somebody's got the kid. Do you call it if somebody snatched your kid? No, you call the police first. Like that should be a first step. If police want to call DCS or whatever the Child Protective Services after, that's fine. But the first call should always be to the police. They're the law enforcement, right? I mean, the counselor should have told you to call the law enforcement, not DCF, because if they want to call them after, their problem. But you call the law first. Anyway, that's where the counselors are going way off base. But continue.
Yeah, and also it's like I also was just trying to follow the advice that I was getting from these so-called professionals, like the lawyer and, the mental health professionals and everything. So it's like, and also you don't want to do the wrong thing. So I'm just trying to follow what I'm being told. And so, like I said, I made that report, and that was made to DCF, the hotline. They had dispatched it to New Britain PD. And then they called me and they said they wanted to see me and Angelina. And at this time, she was seeing her father every weekend. She was going to his house for weekend visits. And so when she asked to see her that weekend, I said she was going to be with the father. And the DCF worker was questioning, why would I send her back to the father? Why am I not filing to remove the visits? And so at that point, I reached out to my attorney, who I paid $15,000 to him to represent me. And he stated that it was unnecessary to get an emergency ex parte, that I could withhold my daughter, that I can just tell my ex in the family app that I'm not going to be sending her back to you and I don't need a court order. And so he advised me to break the court order and just keep her away. When DCF was asking, why aren't you filing for an order, whatever, he then says, okay, I'll file for one next week. Just tell the DCF you're going to keep Angelina for now. So I told my ex I'm not sending her until further notice. And I told DCF I was going to keep her with me until further notice.
Okay, let's stop here for a second. So you went to the police to go and make a complaint. Correct?
No,
No?
I just only called it to DCF, and they referred it to the police. And so they both were investigating.
So you talked to the police already, right? At this point?
Once the detective was assigned, I was in communication with her and DCF.
Okay, so did they have an interview at this time, or did they? Where was the stage when the lawyers tell you to withhold your child?
So once he said withhold her, I did withhold her. And then we had a meeting with DCF, and this was mid October. They
Have you
then scheduled a forensic interview for October 31st, 2022. And so
with
from, let's
was
say,
that
October 10th,
was that with the police at that point in time?
no,
What
no.
what did you talk to the police? Was it before you withhold your child or after?
Well, I started withholding her on the day that the DCF report was made, and I started bringing her back to him the day after the forensic interview. And so, like, during that period in October when I wasn't sending her, the father went to the court and filed a motion for contempt and a motion to modify, saying that I was withholding her and saying he wanted sole custody because I was not
I
following the
I
visitation
I,
schedule.
I understand, but I want to know when you got taken to the police to speak to the police. This is important.
At no point was I ever taken to the police to speak to the police.
What? I
Like I
mean,
said, originally the report was made to DCF. When DCF gets a report, what they do in Connecticut is they then fax it to the police. So the
I
police were given the same report, and then they assigned a detective to investigate.
that okay. I understand what they do, but that's not what should be done. I'm going to tell you that straight out. I don't care what their policy is. That is not the way that you handle crime. This is how you conceal crime. Because when somebody comes and says that a child is being placed in this situation, you don't waste time. You go to the police. That's a serious thing. If somebody's molesting a child, you're damaging the child, and that's a high priority thing that you need to figure out. If somebody says this, you need to sit down and say, is this happening? Well, if it is, it doesn't matter. You need to find out whether or not it's happening. So what do? You investigate. That is what you do. That's a normal reaction. So the fact that they haven't done this is it's abnormal. It's not reasonable. Regardless of whether the practice is there, it should not be done. it
Yeah, and also like my lawyer committed malpractice because he should have immediately filed an emergency ex parte to stop Matthew's visits. Instead, he advised me to violate the court order. He advised me to go against the court order and withhold my child for almost a month. And during that time, like I said, my ex ran to the court to file contempt motions and modifications asking that sole custody be transferred to him and that I be held in contempt for not bringing her to him, even though he was fully aware that there was an open police and DCF investigation into sexual assault against his sons.
let's this is ridiculous. I mean, what I'm listening to what's happening again, it's Child Protective Services should not, I'll say this right out now, they should not be in the business of investigating sexual assaults with involving children. They should not. That should be solely the up to the law enforcement to do their job. Because Child Protective Services, from what I've noticed, is that a lot of the times they don't even have people that are properly licensed. They don't have any. They have everything done internally, and there's no controls over them whatsoever. Where at least with police, they have some semblance of some type of review. With Child Protective Services, there's none. They answer themselves and do whatever the hell they want. This is the way they're structured. They're the worst by far, and they should never be in charge of any investigation. So now you've got the lawyer that advises you to go into the family court and defy the order. Then he goes back and says that he's going to go in and get an order, but then your ex is now then gone in and filed for you to be in contempt. Is that correct? I can't hear you. I can't hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yes. No, yes.
My lawyer never went and filed for that order. So my ex, on his own with no lawyer, walked down to the courthouse and filed. And my old lawyer, who I paid thousands, couldn't even have the decency to follow through. And when I asked him about it, he says, "Oh, don't worry. It's not necessary. I know the judge. I went to law school with her. No judge would ever hold you in contempt for keeping your kids safe." And that was word for word what he said. So I was like, okay, I'm going to trust my lawyer. And also keep in mind, I was my first year of law school. I'm over here like, yeah, I believe in justice. I believe in the system and, learning how things are supposed to work versus witnessing how they work in practice and in real life. And any lawyer who's ever stepped foot in a courtroom will tell you that they don't do things the way the book says. They don't do things what you think when you go in mock trial in law school. And there's so much like deeply embedded corruption, and you only get to really know the truth when you go through it yourself or when it affects somebody that you know. And so then like what they did was, like I said, I made the report to DCF. They referred it to the police. They then scheduled her for a forensic interview, which was scheduled for October 31st, 2022. And that took place at the Yale Child Abuse Clinic in New Haven, Connecticut. And they said to me from DCF that I am not to say anything to my daughter about us going to the forensic. Don't talk to her about the sexual abuse at all. They said if you say anything to her, you may be accused of coaching, and therefore you are advised to just don't talk about it at all. And keep in mind, this was scheduled for October 31st. It was Halloween. So, of course, my daughter wanted to wear her Halloween costume, shows up to this place in a full-blown princess costume, and has no idea why she's there. And I'm not telling her where we're going or why. I'm just like, we're going to go to this place. Let's go. And so it's like she's like not thinking that she has to make disclosures and talk to the people or getting any preparation for it. Then during said interview, which they forced me to sign a waiver prior to it starting, they said I had to sign a waiver saying that I will never be able to watch the interview. I will never be able to get a copy of it. I'll never be able to observe it, witness it, or have a copy of it ever. And that the interview is property of the police, the New Britain Police Department, and that it's basically if I don't sign it, they can't do the forensic interview. And I was like, part of me is like, okay, well, maybe I shouldn't sign this because this seems kind of shady that they're making me like sign this to do it. But then they were like, oh, well, if you don't, the other option is we don't do the interview and then you're going to be looked at like you're hiding something. So I was like, okay, of course I'm not trying to hide anything. I want to help in this investigation and I want to comply with the police and everything you guys are saying.
I, so I'm sorry. This is there's a lot of coercive tactics here. 1 second, we just have to take a moment for a break. I need to take a commercial break, but we'll come back and discuss this after the break.
Donald J. Trump is officially the next president of the United States of America. While millions of people are rejoicing in victory, thousands of others are still concerned about their savings. The unfortunate truth is we still have over $35 trillion in debt, plus wars are still raging around the globe. So what can you do to protect your savings? Many Americans are already taking action by reaching out to the top-rated precious metal company, Goldco. Right now, Goldco is offering you a free gold and silver kit to show you how precious metals like gold and silver could help you diversify your savings before it's too late. Visit MikeLikesGold.com or call 855-441-GOLD to get your free gold and silver kit today. Plus, you can receive up to a 10% instant match on bonus silver for qualified accounts. Visit MikeLikesGold.com or call 855-441-GOLD. I'm excited to announce our Christmas extravaganza is finally here. Get this season's flannel sheets for as low as $59.98. They won't last long, so get them while you can. Our famous My Slippers, they haven't been on sale for over a year. Regularly $119.98, now only $59.98. Our 6-piece towel sets are back in stock with extremely limited quantities, only $29.98. With hundreds of MyPillow products, there's something for everyone on your Christmas list. Bathrobes, duvets, quilts, down comforters, and so much more. So go to MyPillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use your promo code to save on all MyPillow products. For example, flannel sheets for as low as $59.98, or our 6-piece towel sets, just $29.98. But that's not all. I'm extending our 60-day money-back guarantee until March 1st of 2025. Plus, all orders over $75 or more ship absolutely free.
Hello, sorry.
Always trying to sell us something.
Yeah, I mean, gotta pay the bills, right?
just
So hey, pillows are good. Everybody needs a good pillow. If you have a bad pillow, your neck and stuff is gonna not feel good in the morning. I can tell you that right now. Anyway, so you're now dealing with the lawyer that has not like that basically thrown you under the bus, has told you something that shouldn't be done. So what do you know about this lawyer, just out of curiosity?
I know that he tried to say that he was a family lawyer, but really he's 99% a criminal lawyer. And so he kind of misled me from the beginning and he did something else illegal, malpractice, where he told me that he would only represent me if I pay him a flat rate of $15,000. And rather than going through a retainer where he would bill me on an hourly basis, he said it was going to be one flat rate in full fee of $15,000, and I had to pay it up front before he represented me. And I even asked him, can't I just give you like $5,000 and you just bill me and do it on a retainer? And he's like, nope, $15,000 in full or nothing. And he's like, made all these promises. He said he can recover the $15,000 in arrears that my ex owes me for child support. He said that he was going to increase the child support since my ex started a business and started making millions of dollars. He said that he was going to close loopholes in our agreement in the custody thing where we needed to change location of drop off and small things like that. He said that he was also going to guarantee that I could never lose custody unless I beat my kids or burned them with cigarettes, he said. And he said that, don't worry, I went to law school with the judge. We both went to Quinnipiac School of Law. Da 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 da. I've known her for 20 years. Blah 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 blah. It tells me whatever I want to hear. And once he swiped that Amex for the $15K, he never did anything. And he stole my money and literally did nothing to help my case. And in fact, harmed my case.
So he provided you ineffective counsel. He promised you something, made you feel good, and he didn't deliver on that situation. You know, if and you said you said he knew the judge.
Yeah, and he tried to say that that was going to like work in our favor, but it ended up working against me in the end. They went to law school together. They also worked together, and she used to be a criminal defense attorney and worked along with him. And then she was a criminal judge, and then she went to family child support magistrate and then family court.
That right there is that's a red flag. They shouldn't be dealing with that in that kind of situation. Because if you're watching a lawyer that's coming in taking your money and then says that they know the judge and is making you these promises and so forth, this is not the way things should be done. Lawyers are way off base. So let's circle back a little bit before that. So you know you're having this situation with DCS and so forth. So then, where do you get to the point where they decide that they're taking your children?
Well, the outcome of that first forensic interview that took place on Halloween of 2022 was that when I reluctantly signed the papers to let them do it, even though I didn't want to, I did anyways, out of coercion. My daughter went into the interview room where they described it to me, and all of this is them telling me what happened. I didn't get to see this with my own eyes, but they stated to me that they had a room which has nothing other than an easel, and there's a two-way glass in the room. And on the other side of the two-way glass is the police and DCF. And inside the room, it's a social worker and an easel. And so police and DCF can see the child, but the child has no knowledge that there's police there. So they stated to me that what they do is they ask the same set of questions for all children from the ages of 3 through 17. They stated to me that you're not allowed to bring any props, no toys, no props, nothing, no exceptions, they said. And they stated that they are not allowed to ask any leading questions, and that the social worker is supposed to be specially trained to ask questions in a non-leading manner in these forensic interviews.
So you didn't see the interview. You
No.
got no records from it.
Nope. They said that it's statutorily exempt and not allowed, and it's property of the police department. But they did tell me what supposedly happened afterwards. And so what they were in the room with my daughter for like less than 10 minutes. They come back and they said, okay, we're going to debrief you now and let you know what happened. They said that they asked her, Angelina, do you know why you're here? Which is the same question they said they start with all children. And of course, they told me not to tell her where we were going or why or anything. And I listened to them. So when they asked her, do you know why she's here? She says, no, I don't know why I'm here. And they said that the next thing that they'll do if a child doesn't know why they're there is they'll pull out a drawing of like the human body that's proportionate with the child's age. And so they put some stick figure body and asked my daughter to identify 2 or 3 body parts. She properly identified them. And then they asked my daughter, is there any place on your body that no one else is allowed to touch? And that was word for word the way that the social worker stated that she asked it. Is there anywhere on your body that no one else is allowed to touch? And I know plenty of adults who will sit there like and take a second before understanding what's actually being asked, because the way that question was asked is a double negative and it's so confusing. A proper way would be to say, are there any private parts on your body? Do you have any private parts? That's really what they were asking her. And her answer was no. She answers no. Is there anywhere on your body that no one else can touch? No. So that should have also been a red flag. And a lot of people brought this up, which is a good point, that if the child says anyone can touch me anywhere, that should have then prompted them to continue asking more questions. But instead, her saying no triggered them to then stop the forensic interview and come back in the room and tell me they're stopping it. And they said, okay, we're going to close the police investigation now because she didn't make a disclosure. And I was like, what do you mean? And they're like, she made no disclosure. We can't ask her any more questions after she said, no, I don't have private parts, because it would be leading. Therefore, our only option is to completely close the investigation entirely. And you got to start sending her back to the dads every weekend. And the police, DCF, hospital, and lawyer all said I had no choice but to keep sending her to dads.
Let me just stop you there for a second, and I'll just explain what just happened. And this is why they use the Child Protective Services rather than the police. Because when you go after the Child Protective Services, you go into the civil courts, not the criminal courts. They use them so that they can circumvent your constitutional right to due process in a criminal matter. This is why they do this, because it's a separate entity from the police. And so what ends up happening is that they use their civil the civil liability shield that they would normally have to protect criminal activity. This is what's happening. And it's done constructed in the manner that every person who is involved in creating that, they need to go to prison. The people who did this years ago, they should go to prison. If they're still alive, they should go to prison. They should be charged for every single person whose child was interfered with, molested, trafficked, or whatever, because they're 100% responsible. They set up this framework for them to do this. And it's very apparent of why they did this, because they want to, that this is a systematic nature of circumventing the Constitution, right? Because they do this to immigration detainees, because they don't give them the same rights to due process and everything else like this, because the immigration is considered an administrative procedure under civil, you're held under civil rather than criminal, and they don't get the same rights to habeas corpus or can be subjected to cruel and unusual punishment. And I can attest to this because I was tortured in custody of ICE, and it's considered civil detention and not criminal, and they don't apply those types of things. But then to sit down and believe that people have a right, that they have a right under any circumstance to subject people to cruel and unusual punishment is insane. It's like, oh, well, it's not a criminal matter, so we can torture you? No, it's not the way it works. But this is what ends up happening, and they're doing this to people's children domestically. But when they allow this to happen, for example, to, say, illegal immigrants that nobody cares about, this is why they give the justification to bring it into other areas. And whenever you see a violation of the Constitution, even in a very extreme case, you can guarantee that it's going to be used in another situation to destroy innocent people. And in this case, they're using it to destroy children. But go ahead.
Yeah, and I wanted to say, like, after that interview and how it went down, I really felt for the first time. And I even said to the detective, I said to DCF and everybody that this makes me feel like the way this system is with this forensic interview, I said it's almost designed to silence the young children. Because if a child is 9, 10, 11, they can go in that forensic interview and make it through all the questions and potentially give a full disclosure like they want. But if you're not going to change the questions and accommodate for a 3-year-old who has documented disabilities that should have 1,000% be allowed to bring her toy with her if she's using the toy in her disclosures, and they said no, it seemed to me that the way it's designed is so that they're only going to make an arrest if they believe that they can prove the case before the arrest is made. And so it's dangerous because it's basically making it so rather than going by a probable cause standard to make the arrest, they're going by a beyond a reasonable doubt standard to make the arrest because the state doesn't want to lose any more cases. And I was told by an inspector from the state's attorney's office in the New Britain court when I called to question this, and he said to me that in the state of Connecticut, the police are allowed to question children. They're allowed to ask them leading questions. There's no law that says that they have to do these forensic interviews. He said that however many years ago, the state started doing this because before, in the past, the police used to interview children all the time for sexual abuse. And when the people would go to court, the defendant would get a fancy criminal lawyer who would then say, oh, the police asked the victim leading questions, so strike the interview from evidence. And then the state would end up losing the case because the state 90% of the time won't even bother to take the case to trial. Instead, they want you to cop a plea deal. If you won't cop a plea and they know that they won't be able to win at trial, they dismiss it.
But okay, first of all, for one, you can ask probing questions. You can't ask leading questions. There's a difference between them, because you can ask questions to get answers without leading them. Because if you say, did someone touch you in show me where someone touched you, then they point out where they touched you that was wrong. Then who touched you? Because
they told me even asking, has anyone ever touched you there is leading.
No.
They said if you ask, has anyone ever touched you in your privates, that's leading. How is that leading? You're not saying did Dominic touch you? You're just asking, did anyone?
If you show them the body and say, show me where this person touched you, right? And if they point to that, you are saying, show me where they touched you. You didn't say where. You didn't say
that's leading, because your question assumes that they were touched. They need them to first say, I was touched, and then say, show me where, in order for it to be admissible.
When you as a parent come in and say that your child was acting out or any of this stuff, you're a witness to this, right? And this is what has to be considered, because this is when you're looking, when what people are doing there's what should be done and what they're doing. What is being done is not what should be done. What should be done is that as a parent, you are a witness. Like here in Canada, and we don't even have as strong as a victim bill of rights or victims protection as they do in the United States. They state, as me as a parent or a family member, I can report a crime on their behalf because I can sit down and see what's happening. Now, in the United States, it's if you go into the Crime Victims Bill of Rights, or the Crime Victims Rights Act, parents have the rights to assert under the Crime Victims Rights Act, because it's 18 USC 3771, and then the under subsection D, you'll be able to find the different remedies that you can have for that. And that outlines that. And when a judge because of Article 6, those rights cannot be violated in a court, in a state court, because of Article 6 of the U.S. Constitution. And when you're seeing this happen, and because they try to set up family courts as administrative tribunals, they're not actually courts. And they should never be having judgments that way, because they don't have the authority, because you cannot deprive someone of their liberty without due process of law. And when you take a child from a parent, you have a twofold deprivation of liberty, both on the child and the parent, because you cannot sit down and say that that's not a restriction or a deprivation. This is why you're supposed to have due process. And when you're coming in to have the criminal aspect of it, you need due process. And you also have to have protection for the complainant, right? You still have to respect the fact that there's due process, but you also need to protect them from the accused, because if they're raping the kid, you cannot say, well, we're just going to allow the person access to rape the kid. You need to figure out what's going on. So there's a lot of things that are not going on right, that need to be done and need to be fixed. But the fact of the matter is
and
they're doing things wrong.
Exactly. And this high profile case is all over the news with the person, Luigi, who was just recently arrested and charged with murder. And if you look at that, it's like, okay, the person who was murdered is the victim in that. He's not here to give us a statement as a witness about what really happened and who it was. The police have what they believe as enough evidence to give them probable cause to arrest the guy, but they're not able to prove the case right now 100%, but they still arrested him, and now he's going to go through the legal process. So in my case, Angelina was not given that. Dominic was never arrested. Not in the first investigation, the second, the third, the fourth. Matthew was never arrested. So they basically look at it as like, we need to be able to 100% prove this case with evidence, or else we're not going to waste our money and time. And I believe that they're doing this by design so that it basically sets you up to then lose custody. And after that interview ended, they said to me, okay, we're going to label this as no disclosure. We're going to write down in the notes that Angelina did not make a disclosure. We're going to recommend she does therapy. And the hospital, the lawyer, the DCF, and the detective all said to me, you have to start sending her back to dad now. You have to start sending her every weekend for his visits. And even though I didn't want to send her back there, and I still thought that something was wrong, I was listening to what they all told me, and I began sending her back from November of 2022 every weekend. She never did those acts again after that. She never spoke about it again until February 1st of 2023, when I walk into my living room and caught her doing the acts again. And when I saw her doing it, I immediately started recording. And I walked over to her. I said, what are you doing? And this time, instead of saying that the toy was tickling her, this time she said, I'm sitting on Mousy. And she says, remember, I told you that Dominic does this to me all the time. And I was like, what does he do to you? And she's like, he does this. And then she again continues to do these motions. And I immediately called my attorney. I was like, I want to make sure that I'm asking the attorney what to do before I do anything. I said, should I call the police? Should I call DCF? What do I do? Because at the end of that first interview, the detective said she was not going to interview the suspect because she didn't want to potentially taint any future investigation just in case my daughter ever made another disclosure.
Okay. We're that's that. We'll discuss this. We'll have to close down this segment, but we can talk about this after a break and so forth. And so, for those who are watching on Frank's speech, you'll see the rest of this the next day. But the ones on the live stream, just hang tight. We'll be continuing this on. I'm just for people to say quickly, where can people find you and where can they help you?
So my old TikTok account was Pro Legal Solutions. It got banned with 133,000 followers. I have a new page, Pro Legal Solutions LLC, and a second page, which is the Life and Law podcast. You can also go in my link tree, and it's linktr.ee/look it's Theo ITTS. And I have a petition for the sexual abuse investigation to be reopened that has almost 20,000 signatures. I have a second petition which has 5,000 or 6,000 signatures to remove this judge from the bench. And if anybody has any questions, I'm also on YouTube under Pro Legal Solutions, on Facebook, Theodora Antar. I'm on Instagram, and yeah, my information's out there. So follow me and reach out, send me a DM if you'd like to talk.
I guess I should probably turn my mic on, right? I'll close here with the prayer and then we will go over, take a short break and we'll be on to the next segment. All right. Heavenly Father, Lord, we thank you for this day. We thank you for your love, grace, and mercy. We thank you for the hope that you have given us this day. And Lord, watch over Theo and her children. And Lord, I ask of you this day to watch over all the people who are standing up for their kids and bring the men together with the women to work together to rebuild their churches, their communities, and their nation. Lord, to help the children that they would get some peace and prosperity from all this wickedness and evil that is going on is my prayer. In Jesus' name, amen. And again,
Amen.
this is something that needs to be looked at and things that we really need to pay attention to. And for, for the people here, we'll be also seeing you on the other side. Just hang tight. We will be back up shortly.
Hello friends, Kaysha here, and some of you might know me from the Karis Project podcast. So today I want to share with you a few updates of things that we have going on and how you can be a part of helping us going forward. So as many of you know, my father, Dale Richardson, is a mechanical engineering technologist with a bachelor's degree in technology, and I worked for the provincial government back home in Saskatchewan, Canada, at a maximum security prison and hospital for the criminally and mentally insane. Now, as many of you know, we were exposing the improper contagion mitigation procedures for the COVID pandemic in early 2020, and likewise, how that relates to human trafficking, treason, and election interference in Canada and the United States. And this is precisely why the Karis Project has filed petitions for redress of grievance in the states of Texas, Colorado, and Michigan, as well as the province of Alberta in Canada. Now, it has recently come to the attention of the Karis Project that there was a mother in Colorado who was punished by the courts for trying to protect her children against a predator for being sexually abused and brutally attacked by the father. She's now going to jail and serving time for trying to protect her children against the evils and the corruption that we have all seen the last few years. Now, this is the same thing that we are seeing with Alberta's Minister of Health, Ariana Lagrange, who would not take the necessary actions to protect children from being sexually abused by convicted pedophiles and continuing to allow them to practice in the province of Alberta. And their licenses are currently being protected by the Alberta College of Physicians and Surgeons. Absolutely horrendous, if you ask me. The failure of our governments to bring these petitions to the floor have directly affected patriots like Tina Peters in Colorado, who are being politically persecuted with complete impunity, by the way, while convicted pedophiles are being protected. Here at the Karis Project, it is important to us that we the people are able to take our rights back and use our God-given constitutional rights to be able to expose the evil going on in this country and hold politicians accountable. We need especially the strong men to take charge in supporting the Karis Project's action plan financially in doing the work of holding the government accountable to protect our rights. And if you guys know me, you know already that this is my favorite quote, and so I'm going to leave it with you here today, because the most important thing that we need in this country right now is strong men. And I, as a woman, know just as much as anyone else just how valuable and important it is for us to have strong men leading our country to success. And so I'll leave you with this. The greatest want of the world is the want of men. Men who will not be bought or sold. Men who in their innermost souls are true and honest. Men who do not fear to call sin by its right name. Men whose conscience is as true to duty as the needle is to the pole. And men who will stand for the right, though the heavens may fall. So, my friends, you've heard all that I've had to say today and the importance of the same. As you can see, we have people, strong patriots and women, standing up for what's right and being completely destroyed. Politically, financially, we have good women in this country, good mothers whose children are being completely abused and taken advantage of within the system and even within their homes. And nothing is being done about it. Now is the time to take a stand. The CARES Project has an action plan, and based on all the experience that we've had throughout the years, we have the ability to teach people how to get this done. We need to work together in a time such as this, because our time is limited. Elections are coming up, and something needs to change. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. Now's the time to take a stand, and that is precisely why I encourage you to stand with the CARES Project for we the people. Thank you.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the CARES Project podcast. We have with us again Theo, and
Oh, you know what? It looks like this girl who was locked up without bail is calling from her number. She might be out of jail. Maybe I should answer.
sure,
Okay. Hello?
Hunt you down and kill you. Do you understand? I swear on my son's fucking life. You contact Ellie again, I will fly my ass to Massachusetts and find you. Do you understand?
This is her husband calling me from her cell phone, threatening me right
Who's
now.
this?
Is this live? This is the
Yes.
girl who's in jail. Remember how you said her husband does? It's on mute. He can't hear me. But I just want everyone to see that this is the guy who knows his wife has been in prison for 9 months without bail. He literally just called me and said,
Is
"Stay
he
the fuck away from my wife. I'll come kill you." And he
Is
just
he
hung
still-
up. He just threatened to kill me. And he's a
Well,
federal employee.
he's a federal employee, and he just threatened to kill you. I mean,
I hope that was recorded.
it's on a live stream. I mean, like
I know she had court yesterday. I know this is off topic, but I know that she had court yesterday for her criminal case. She had court yesterday, and she was saying that she was thinking that she was going to ask them to let her out, whatever. And I tried to log on to their live stream link that they had for Zoom for this court in San Diego, California. And I was on it for like an hour. It was all these other defendants one by one going through it. And all of a sudden it just booted you off, and it completely kicked out me from the Zoom link. And then I tried to go back on and it wouldn't work. And I tried even doing a dial in and it didn't work. So I think that he had said in the past it does that. I think that when she was being seen, they weren't on the record or they weren't showing on Zoom. So I have no idea what happened yesterday in court. But this guy is literally, he just texted me. He goes, "I swear on my children's life, I will find you and end you. Stay away from Elle and the rest of my family." He just texted me that when literally all I was doing was just talking to her on the phone and trying to help her, like, with support, like as a friend, and trying to connect her with organizations that could try to get her out of jail because she was in there without bond. And when I last checked, it said that she was still in there. And so it's like, but I haven't heard from her in 2 days now. So I'm really curious about what happened in court yesterday. And I think he's pissed because he really wants her to take a plea deal to plead guilty to a felony and go on house arrest and probation and all this stuff. And she doesn't want to because she's asserting that she's innocent. And so he's like now lashing out on me. And it's like, it's crazy. So I know that's off topic, but yeah, you got to love getting death threats and swearing on his children's life he's going to find me and end me. And he even wrote that in writing in a text. from
that,
her
that,
phone because I
that
blocked him on his phone the other day.
that's a crime. You should report that. You
I
should.
know. I will when this is over.
At the end of the day, what I'll sit down and say, this is kind of the type of thing that ends up happening when you have these situations. Um, we we know that you're having the current situation where they've taken your kids and so forth. We gotta kind of go back and get a little bit of backstory about you and your ex, that now has the kids. What was before you guys got to this point and you started to realize, because you guys were already separated or split up when the abuse, you got wind of the abuse, right? Is that correct?
Yes. We had already had a final judgment in court from 2019, and I got wind of the abuse in 2022. So it had been 3 years already of us having had a final judgment in court.
Okay, so what, because this guy seems to have a lot of connections. So when you guys were married, what was the situation like? What did you start to, did you notice anything that was of what he did, who he was associated with, that kind of stuff?
So we were actually never married. We were coworkers, and it was never even like a relationship. I ended up getting pregnant like only a few months of knowing him, and I knew that he had an ex-wife and 2 kids, and he actually didn't even want me to keep the pregnancy, and it was just no support from him ever. And I wouldn't even say it was even a relationship ever. I noticed when he was trying to make it work with me just for the baby's sake. After a while, he was bringing me around his friends, he was bringing me around his family. And I noticed that a lot of his friends were extremely wealthy, and well connected. And
So
like, I started to realize that he had a lot of friends that worked in law enforcement and state employees.
just where did you guys work together?
So we were both working at a construction company that is in Connecticut. He was a salesman and I was the manager of the company. And that's how we met.
Okay, and so you guys ended up getting involved with each other. You got pregnant, and
Yes, and he didn't want me to keep it, and I did. And then he said, "Okay, let's try to just put on an act like we're going to work things out." And we tried to play along for a little while, and then eventually, by the time she was 4 months old, 5 months old, we had a final judgment, that she would be with me, primary residency, and she would see him. We would decide on a week by week basis when she would see him. So
so
he
this
never even was around.
so this was just a custody issue. There was no divorce or any of that.
Custody and child support, because I did
Okay,
ask for child support as well. But
did you
I realize now that I should have never even took him to court. I should have just raised my daughter and not involved him, because if I
did
never went to court in the first place, none of this would have happened.
did you I mean, did you guys ever live together or no?
Not really. Like, a lot of times he would stay at my house, and like during COVID, he was there like the whole time during the quarantine. But we didn't, like, he never moved all of his stuff out of his mom's and came to go move in with me. He would just stay there and, pack enough stuff for whatever time he stayed. And but he always maintained his bedroom and everything at his mom's. And every time we would argue, he would say, "Oh, I'm going to my mom's, I'm going to my mom's." And like, so he was never like fully committed.
Okay, so then what? Okay, so then this starts to make a little bit more sense. So, like, because I know we've had previous conversations. So tell us a little bit about uh what your sort of relationship with this guy went, and how did it start? Because you say you started to notice that he was connected to wealthy people and people in law enforcement and so forth. What did you notice from those type of connections that he had?
I mean, it wasn't anything like bad at the time. And even like one of his best friends, who is a correctional officer, has a wife who is a former police officer, current state marshal, and current police commissioner. And her father is also a state marshal and has been for more than 40 years. And I know one time I was asking if anybody on Facebook knew a way to find somebody's social security number, because my former boss won a judgment in small claims court, and we were trying to collect on that, and we needed the social to see if he had any bank accounts. And the girl messaged me and told me what's his name, and within seconds she gave me his social, all the information on him. And I'm like, how did you do that? And she's like, oh, don't tell anybody where you got this info from. And so like it was like they were helping me with that one instance. But then once things went sour with me and Angelina's dad, it was like he literally told all his friends and family not to talk to me, like not to have any contact with me at all. So it was like, okay, you can be around the friends as long as we're on good terms. But if we're not on good terms, they're all going to not talk to you. I can't hear you.
So he was able to get in. She was able to get information that people shouldn't have access to very quickly, and said, "Don't tell anybody about where you got this information."
Yeah. And she clearly has access to law enforcement databases that regular civilians don't have access to. And that
So
was evident at that point. And I actually said to him something that time. I was like, oh, Jamie did this, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, that's crazy. I'm like, your friend Josh must have connections. And he's like, oh no, it's not him. It's her. She's the one with connections. And then I realized like she also has ties to politics and the DTC, and she has like substantial ties with her father.
What's the DTC?
The Democrat Party.
Oh, in Connecticut.
In Connecticut, yeah.
Okay, all right. So,
which is the controlling party in the state and has been forever.
Yes. So when you're looking at his ex and so forth, the one that the mother of the kids that were involved in this thing with your daughter, what's the nature? What does she do? How does she factor into the picture? Is she still involved in any way, or what's?
So she is a former stripper and escort who then went to nursing school and became a nurse. So she's a BSN and RN, and she works as a nurse now. And she became aware that the allegations were against her son, and she basically told the police that nothing happened. There was more than one investigation, and in one of the later investigations, when my daughter said that something happened one day when she was left alone with Dominic, the police tried to question the father, and the father called up the ex-wife, put her on speaker, and told the police, oh, my son was at a sleepover on that day. So then the detective turned around and said, oh, well, because she said that he was at a sleepover, there's no crime scene, so I'm closing the investigation. And they didn't verify that he was really at a sleepover. They didn't say what time it was, because just because somebody went to a sleepover one day, if they really did, does not mean that they did not sexually abuse somebody else at another point in time on that same day. And she never verified that any sleepover happened.
This again is really why they involve the Child Protective Services, because when you're going on for constitutional due process in the criminal matter, especially, you have to determine whether or not that alibi is valid or not, right? Like you can't just, well, because I said so. That doesn't work. You have to see, does it check out? Because then if you go out and figure out what they're saying is a lie, then you can't take that as evidence, right? Because if they're saying, okay, well, I was at, the fish market or whatever, but your cell phone data says that you were actually at the scene of the crime. Well, they can't take that because they're like, well, why is your cell phone over there? What's the explanation, right? Like, and they wouldn't tell you that, but they would ask you questions as to why this information is, and they would look at your reaction, see all these different things, and this is going to show you how they continue to investigate. But they didn't do that. You can't just sit down and say somebody said something and, well, that's just the case, and just arbitrarily take one person over the other. You have to begin to look at other things on how you're going to determine whether or not someone is telling the truth. And the parent of a child who is being accused, especially the mother, is more likely to go ahead and to cover for the child, right? That's what you
Exactly.
got.
And it's like, if there was a sleepover, then who was the sleepover with? Why didn't you call the alleged parent of whoever was a sleepover to confirm that? And it's like, there's so many things that they didn't do. Even she said she testified, and I have the hearing posted on my YouTube channel of this hearing, which was the June 15th, 2023, which was 3 weeks after I lost custody when we came back to court. And the judge subpoenaed the DCF worker and detective by herself and put them on the stand and questioned her by themselves. So she was like playing the role of attorney, judge, everything. And she says to the detective, what happened, whatever. And the detective said that that day that Matthew claimed that Angelina was only left alone with Dominic for 30 minutes while he was at the store. And she said in court and testified that Matt sent the detective a screenshot that was supposedly from the surveillance camera in his home. She testified that the screenshot that he sent her the timestamp on it did not match the right day. The time and date that he was on the screenshot was the wrong date. And when she questioned him about it, he then allegedly, according to her testimony, sent a GPS location screenshot showing that he was at the supermarket, and that somehow proved that she wasn't sexually abused.
The,
And I
the,
was like, are you kidding me?
okay, let's we see that this is happening, and there's a lot of issues going on there, right? And but what I want to kind of see is just the type of thing that was going on previously, because some of the stuff that we talked about is very important as to why we're seeing what's happening now. So, what was this, back to your what kinds of things was he involved in? What was he doing? You'd mentioned that some of the activities that you were aware that he was involved
Well, I noticed that he seemed to be getting information about insider trading. He was getting tipped off about major plays when it comes to the stock market, to the crypto markets. For example, he started telling me to invest in Tesla back in like the beginning of like 2019, when a share of Tesla was like $20 a share before it split 3 times. And I was like, what's Tesla? He was telling me to invest in Tesla and AI back in 2019. So, I mean, I would ask him, like, where were you getting this information? And he'd be like, don't worry about it. And like, kind of like laugh. Like, it was like obvious that somebody was giving him this information. And a lot of times I would just say, okay, you tell me to invest in this. I'll throw like $100 in it just to see what happens. And every time the stuff would go up when he said, and he would say to me like, oh, buy Dogecoin right now and sell it tomorrow. And it was like the times when I did exactly what he said, when he said, I made money. And then I realized like, okay, he's getting fed this information. This guy has never been to college. He literally went to culinary school, works as a chef for 20 years, and now he does construction, has a construction company. So it's like, he's not a finance guy. He doesn't have a background in that. And so that was weird. Seeing like the level of wealth for the people that he was around, stuck out as well. And also that he was really, really big into like drinking and partying, and like he would go out and he couldn't just have 2 drinks. He would have 10, 20. And just, like the substance abuse and the dangerous activities, risk taking, always sleeping around, sex addiction. Like there was just so many red flags right in my face, and I just tried to ignore it. And
So, what kind of substance? How often did he drink, and did he use anything else other than alcohol?
like he would smoke a lot of marijuana, and he would also do mushrooms. He was saying that he was microdosing mushrooms for a while, and I believe that now he has escalated into more hard drugs. But at the time, it was mostly really bad issues with alcohol, and he would drink almost every day. And like I said, when he would drink heavy, like a lot.
Okay, so what was your relationship like with this guy?
It was like I was home 24/7 with a baby and another child by myself, taking care of my house, taking care of my kids, taking care of everything by myself. And he was out partying all the time, living his life as he pleased, doing absolutely nothing. And every once in a while, he would give me some money and thought that that was going to be enough to keep me quiet and accepting of it. And he wanted, even when we weren't together, even after we went to court, he kept trying to still maintain like a sexual relationship between us. And if I told him I didn't want to, and I was trying to turn him away and see other people or whatever, he would then say that he's not going to pay child support. He's not going to fulfill his responsibilities that he would commit to for our daughter. And he would say like, oh, well, I'm not going to do this unless you sleep with me. Or I'm not going, if you start sleeping with me again, then I'll pay my child support. And so like, then it was almost like I felt like I had no choice but to go back to court because he wasn't following through. And then he was like, oh, take me back to court. Almost like he had no concerns because he knew that he had connections,
So
which I underestimated.
so when you with your relationship, what kinds of things did he start getting you to do? What where did, because he's clearly extorting you for money, like your child support, to have sex, which is, this is way off base. But what other things was he doing previously to that?
I mean, so many things. Like it's, I really don't want to get in too much into it more, but basically, he's not a good person. His friends are not good people. His family are not good people. He has a lot of money, and he's got a lot of people willing to break the law to cover for him and for his family.
What you mentioned that there was, when you'd mentioned about what was going on with your daughter and so forth, that there was, what did he have inside of the house everywhere? You want to mention that?
So, yeah, so he had these like security cameras all over the house, which is why when I mentioned the screenshot, I told the detective that he had cameras in every room of the house. And I said, I believe that he has a cloud-based storage where you can pay to save all the videos. And I said, why can't we do a subpoena? Let's see if there's anything on the footage. And the detective said, no, we can't subpoena it, whatever. And when I brought up the abuse that allegedly happened on a certain date, the detective said he sent her a screenshot from his cameras, but the date and time were wrong. So, he basically tried to use evidence supposedly from the camera that wasn't even from the right date to try to claim that nothing happened. But my daughter did disclose, and I recorded her saying this and showed it to the police and DCF, that said that one time daddy saw it happen on his camera, and referring to those cameras that he had in the house. And she said that he saw Dominic sexually assault her on the camera, and that he spoke through the camera and said, what are you doing? And reacted. And then when he came home, she stated that he put her in her room and told her to go play. And she saw and heard him talking to Dominic in the other room, in which he said, oh, don't do that again, and so on and so forth. And she saw him speak to Dominic, but she said he never talked to her about it, and that he continued to leave her alone with Dom.
Where was the camera that he was looking, where this got filmed?
This one that she was referring to, she supposedly said was in the living room, and she said it was near the TV, and that there was gray couches in the living room. And I've never been in his apartment. He doesn't have this apartment anymore. He had it for like a year. But she's describing it in such detail, the colors, the location, everything. And she's really smart. And so, like, the fact that she can recall so detailed about everything is also indicative of trauma,
Okay.
where people have, a photographic memory develops when you're traumatized. And so, like, I believe her. Why would she lie? Why would a 3-year-old lie? She has no reason to lie. She's an honest child.
Well, we're gonna take a break here, and then we're gonna pick this up after the break.
Donald J. Trump is officially the next president of the United States of America. While millions of people are rejoicing in victory, thousands of others are still concerned about their savings. The unfortunate truth is we still have over $35 trillion in debt, plus wars are still raging around the globe. So what can you do to protect your savings? Many Americans are already taking action by reaching out to the top-rated precious metal company, Goldco. Right now, Goldco is offering you a free gold and silver kit to show you how precious metals like gold and silver could help you diversify your savings before it's too late. Visit MikeLikesGold.com or call 855-441-GOLD to get your free gold and silver kit today. Plus, you can receive up to a 10% instant match on bonus silver for qualified accounts. Visit MikeLikesGold.com or call 855-441-GOLD. I'm excited to announce our Christmas extravaganza is finally here. Get this season's flannel sheets for as low as $59.98. They won't last long, so get them while you can. Our famous My Slippers, they haven't been on sale for over a year. Regularly $119.98, now only $59.98. Our 6-piece towel sets are back in stock with extremely limited quantities, only $29.98. With hundreds of MyPillow products, there's something for everyone on your Christmas list. Bathrobes, duvets, quilts, down comforters, and so much more. So go to MyPillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use your promo code to save on all MyPillow products. For example, flannel sheets for as low as $59.98. Or our 6-piece towel sets, just $29.98. But that's not all. I'm extending our 60-day money-back guarantee until March 1st of 2025. Plus, all orders over $75 or more ship absolutely free.
Hi, yeah, we're back here now. There's just this whole situation. Plates could be made. Obviously, there was that the threats made, and this is the type of thing that we kind of see happening more frequently when these cases are happening. And I've interviewed people multiple times when it came down to this child protective services and the way that they operate whenever these things happen. With the guy that have these cameras all over his house. Now that we're kind of back on that, were these cameras ever in a place that you guys were together?
What do you mean?
Well, I mean, obviously, if he's watching through the cameras, he's this is this is this is odd. You don't normally see people watching through their cameras. Like, how would he know that this was going on? Unless he's
Well, the way that the cameras work is if there's motion detected, you get a notification. So he, according to Angelina, was at work and she was home alone with Dominic, and Dominic was doing that, and the father then noticed on the camera something was happening and spoke through the camera.
why would you have okay? If you have your kid at home, why would you have the cameras on to detect the motion? Because there be motion going on all the time, right? Think about this, right? Because
Because
if
it's a way for him to watch live what's happening while he's not there.
Yes, but why would you do that, right? Like, I mean, if you're working, think about this. Why would you want to be continually watching what's going on live in your house?
Well, it's not like he's sitting there 24/7 watching. Every once in a while, he would probably watch, and it's also recording it. So if he ever wanted to go back and look, he can. But usually, if you get a notification, if it sees something happening, it might alert you to then look and then see, oh, what is it? Did someone just walk by, or is there something else happening? And I would only assume that if he caught this happening, that he must have gotten notified or something. And she claimed that he only saw her on the camera once and that he talked to Dominic, but then he continued to leave Dominic and he didn't call the police. He didn't call DCF. And when I called DCF and police later, he covered it up and lied to them and tried to say that I'm crazy and I made all this up.
I mean, from listening from this perspective, I have a hard time believing that that was the case of what he was doing, because you wouldn't do that. Like, I mean, that doesn't make rational sense. I've had alarms in the house and stuff like that, and motion sensors, and like, you wouldn't just be sitting there. If you know people are at home, you would expect, if they called you to say that there was something wrong, that you would really do that. Because if you're working, why would you spend time looking at what's going on when you know you have people in the house that should be looking after it? If there's a problem, then they would call you. This doesn't really make sense. But I mean,
Well, also the people that were at the house were children. So it's like, really, if it's his visitation time, he's supposed to be spending time with his daughter. Instead, he would dump her off with his pedophile teenage son and go off and work and go on dates and do all this, whatever he wanted, and live his single bachelor lifestyle. Meanwhile, my little girl, who I was being forced to bring there for his visits, was dumping her off with his son. So he probably, of course, wants the cameras, because if he's absent the majority of the time, the cameras are his way to pop in and see what's going on.
you said that he was off a lot with his girlfriends and so forth. So, was he with other women when you guys were together? Because you guys weren't really actually. You didn't seem like he was that. Did he have? Was he faithful, or was he with other people?
He was with other people before, during, and after my pregnancy. During the pregnancy, especially, he told me that he was never going to stop sleeping with other women, that he was on openly about being on all the dating apps. He said to me that he's a sex addict, that even if I sleep with him 10 times a day, that he'll still go sleep with other girls on his way to come see me. And even when Angelina was like 6 months old, he started sleeping with the then 18-year-old daycare teacher, who was also babysitting privately in our home, had a key to my house. Come to find out, then he starts a relationship with her and sleeping with her. He then slept with multiple of my friends behind my back. It was constant finding out lies. Like, he would have girls calling him at like 2 a.m, and then he would say, "Oh, I'm going to block them. I'm going to block them." Then a week later, he would unblock them and save the girl's name in his phone as a guy's name, or save it in his phone as something else. And so then if I later found evidence, it was just so crazy what he would do.
Did he use a lot of pornography?
Yeah, he was severely addicted to pornography. And when I would leave, I remember there was times when I left the house and he was over and he stayed if I had to go to work and he didn't. And I would leave, and then I realized I forgot something. So I came back 10 minutes later, and I walk in and he's got the flat screen TV that's mounted to the wall in the living room. And he's going on the internet browser from the smart TV and pulling up porn websites, watching porn, sitting on my couch while the porn is playing on the TV, doing what. And I'm like, what the hell is going on? You're literally I leave for 5 minutes and you're already, and it would be he would do that, and then he would do it again and again and again. And he would jerk off sometimes 10 times a day or more. And so it was he was never satisfied. He was always always just trying to get more and more and more and more. And it was he would then, going with girls, and, it was just terrible, because when you're with somebody who's sleeping with 10 other people, it's easy to get STIs and infections and things like that. And it's constantly having to take antibiotics, constantly having to take whatever, because he's bringing something else home now. And it's like, okay, once I completely stopped sleeping with him, he stopped paying child support and he vowed that he was going to take my daughter away. And then he did.
Did he ever engage in any of these illicit activities with respect to, um, like, I mean, obviously he was with a woman who was a stripper and so forth. So he was around what people would term sex work. Was he ever involved with that any further?
I mean, I don't really know. Like, there's so much about him that I'm learning that I never knew. And so the more I learn, the more disgusted I am. I am going to have to log off in a second, though. So I don't know if maybe we should do another episode to do a part two, but um, maybe
Yeah,
we can try again another time.
yeah, we can do that. I mean, at the end of the day, one of the things I'll say before we close out here is that pornography is one of the largest indicators when it comes to pedophilia. And if there's high porn consumption, that's something that really needs to look into further, because that's like a high rate of that is absolutely abnormal and it should never be done. And this is where these types of things have to be looked into. I understand that situations are the way they are. Again, just give people a few minutes. Just tell them kind of where they can reach you, how they can help you, and we'll close this down. I know you.
Yeah, thank you so much for your time today. And anybody who's listening, you can find me on TikTok from my two accounts, which are the Life and Law Podcast, and the other one is Pro Legal Solutions LLC. You can go on linktr.ee/look it's Theo, spelled ITTSTHEO. And that's my link tree. You can also find that link in all of my social medias on Pro Legal Solutions on YouTube. You can also find it on Instagram under Look It's Theo. And I have two petitions going, one to reopen the sexual abuse investigation into Dominic, and the other one is to remove this Judge Grossman from the bench. And if you want, anybody would like to contact me, you can also reach me via email at justiceforangelina@gmail.com. And that's Juliana with two N's.
All right, and thank you for coming. I mean, this is a horrendous situation. There's a lot of things that are going wrong that need to get dealt with. Um, I have, if you're interested, I have somebody that might want to talk to. You can help you out, deal with some of the stress of all of this stuff on the back end. I'll connect you with her. She's very good. We've done a lot of work together with people who are being victims of trafficking, or their kids are being trafficked and so forth. So I can help connect you, help get through some of this stuff, because it's pretty tough, and nobody should be going through this. And we'll talk again further, but I will let you go here. I'll close here with a prayer, and then we'll close this down. Heavenly Father, Lord, we thank you for this day. We thank you for your love, grace, and mercy. Lord, we thank you for the hope that you've given us this day. And Lord, watch over Theo and her children and her situation. And Father, I ask of you this day to protect them and to give them the grace and the strength to get through this situation. And Lord, I ask of you this day to help to resolve the situation and to get the men and the women to stand up and to work together to do what is right and pleasing in your sight. And Lord, I ask of you this day for a speedy resolve of the situation, and help the people to stand up against this wickedness and this evil, to fix it, give the children some protection from this evil is my prayer. In Jesus' name. And
Amen.
thank you all for coming. I mean, thank you for, coming out and sharing your story. We'll come back and we'll talk about this again. This is something that people should really understand, that what is happening is very terrible, and that the government is involved in trafficking both the illegals coming across the border, but also domestically. And there are well established networks of child traffickers within the state organization. And thank you all for coming. See you again.